Hello, I am Joel McLeod, and welcome to the 905er. Here we are at the start of another school year in Ontario. As parents, we want our kids to be set up for success. One of the best ways to do that is to ensure that they start their day with a full belly. Hunger can be one of the biggest detriments to a child's success in school. It was in that spirit that the federal government announced the National School Food Program, a partnership between the federal government and provincial and territorial governments, along with First Nations groups, to help fund school breakfast and snack programs. The program operates by transferring funds to the provinces, which are then distributed among various schools and boards. But does the program work? And is it the best that we can do? Additionally, how committed is Ontario to ensuring that this program operates as intended? Well, to answer those questions and more, I reached out to one of the advocates for the National School Food Program. And today, I am with Sarah Keyes and Heather Thoma of the Coalition for Healthy School Food. Sarah has led experiential community-connected food literacy programming in BC and Ontario, and she currently spearheads policy advocacy in Ontario. Sarah is also the food literacy lead at Farm to Cafeteria Canada and has a Master's of Environmental Studies degree from Dalhousie, where she focused on food system sustainability. Heather has worked with nonprofit organizations related to food, farming, health, and the arts at the local and provincial level for over 25 years, including most recently as a food procurement coordinator in support of Ontario's student nutrition programs. Together, they join me to share the highs and lows of the National School Food Program, how it's been rolled out so far in Ontario, and where the gaps are in ensuring that our children have the best possible outcome for success in our schools.
Netflix has a new, monstrous story to tell. In 1950s Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived quietly on a decaying farm, hiding a house of horrors so gruesome it would redefine the American nightmare. Driven by isolation, psychosis, and an all-consuming obsession with his mother, he committed crimes that would haunt Hollywood for decades. The third and most harrowing installment of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's anthology series. Watch Monster, the Ed Gein story, October 3rd, only on Netflix.
Thank you very much, Sarah Keyes and Heather Thoma, for coming on to talk about the Healthy Schools program that's going on in Ontario, getting our kids fed before they start their days at school, which is I really don't think it should be a controversy on that, or should be a hard time being a goal. But this is something that we're getting into as the start of this school year is implementing. Thank you, Heather and Sarah, both for coming on today to the 905er.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, pleased to be here.
Let's set the base for this episode, just so all of our listeners are on the same footing. Under the current funding model proposed by the federal government, how does the National School Nutrition Program work? Just so we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2024, in budget 2024, the federal government committed to $1 billion over 5 years. And that $1 billion was $79 million the first year, it's $201 million the second year, and it goes up incrementally over the years. All of that funding is being sent to provinces and territories. There's bilateral agreements with each province and territory, which got signed really quickly, less than a year. And as well as Indigenous communities and partners. So the funding is basically flowing to these partners from the federal government. And basically it's supporting the existing, because all provinces and territories already have school food programs running. And so basically the federal money is a support for the existing programs, for those programs to strengthen and grow and really align with the national school food policy.
Okay. And so we're going to narrow it down here to Ontario. What's the current state of that program here in Ontario?
Okay. So basically, the Ontario and the federal government signed the National School Food Program back in November 2023. We were very pleased that they were the third province to sign on to the national program. When that agreement, after that agreement was made, the funding from the federal government was transferred to the Ontario government, who then flowed it to the 14 lead agencies that currently deliver these programs. So in Ontario, we have our Ontario Student Nutrition Program as well as the First Nations Student Nutrition Program. These programs offer school-age children and youth access to a mid-morning meal program. So it's primarily breakfast and snacks that are served with a limited number of lunches offered throughout the program. And so what happens is the funding from the province and the federal government gets sent to 14 lead agencies, which are nonprofits that are in 14 different regions in Ontario. They work with either community partner nonprofits, kind of at the middle stage, or they work directly with schools and school boards, and they offer these programs, support these programs to run. So they do things like support staff and support staff at the regional level, as well as support food and logistics. Heather can speak to that a little bit more. And then on the ground, what happens is most programs run with the help of school level volunteers. So right now, before the federal funds came in, 80% of schools had student nutrition programs. So that's the Ontario Student Nutrition Program, and then the First Nations Student Nutrition Program operates at 161 sites in Ontario. So yeah, these programs have been running for quite a long time, and the federal money is a really welcomed addition to now a really cost shared program, because we already have, the nonprofits that run these programs. They raise a lot of money from the communities, from national and provincial funders. They get the funding from the provincial government, and now we have funding from the federal government. In some cases, too, there's municipal funding that goes into these programs. So it's a really great cost shared model here in Ontario, and one that's going to thrive even more with the federal funding.
The one distinction here that I think is important to point out to listeners, like, this isn't a streamlined program. This does seem to be like there are different programs. Like, it's a decentralized program, if you will, rather than like a specific like federal school lunch program in the schools. I'm wondering, in your experience, has this helped or has this hindered kind of the distribution of funds, or the effectiveness of the program to feed hungry kids in Ontario?
Yeah, well, we do have a community-based model here in Ontario, and that's actually a really big strength, because what happens is the community gets to decide what their school food program looks like, and they get to involve all the local actors at that school level, so at that community level. So there's public health, there's principals, there's the student nutrition program coordinators, who are all sitting at a table making decisions, and so that's a really big strength, actually. And then at the school level, they get to decide what they want in terms of a program. Do they want a snack program, a breakfast program? If there's enough money, I'm sure there'll be more interest in lunch. But we actually, we think that this community-based model is one that is unique in Canada, and it's one that has been really able to leverage the power of nonprofits and charities to raise a lot more money. Because right now, before the federal funds came in, MCCSS, the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, they provide seed funding, but it's only seed funding. So it's only a portion of the whole program costs. And so that's why it's really important to have these nonprofits raising more money for these programs, even though they do look different. Heather, do you want to speak about that a little bit more? Like, are you?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Sarah that the diversity of programs is a strength. There are different cultural groups, there are different needs from north to south. And one of the things that we really want to continue to support is that the local community farmers and businesses can be part of the systems as well. And that's going to look different in every community also. So there are logistical complexities to that for sure. But I think what we really are looking to do is create a cohesion and some principles that are the same across all the programs, but allow each community to make their own decisions. One of the things that we've organized recently is a visioning process across the province, so that we can bring all the different folks from different sectors together to really see how do we balance the diversity with the shared vision. And I think that's just going to be an ongoing process that allows more buy-in, really, as Sarah said, from
Mhm.
different people involved in different sectors of the school food system.
And one thing that is great in addition to that is we have now, we're working on the, final draft of our Ontario school food vision. So what all these
Mhm.
145 participants came to this visioning process and gave input on what we want to see long term in school food in Ontario. So we have that, but we also have the National School Food Policy, which has a really comprehensive vision that is working towards a universal program that's non-stigmatizing and supports local farmers and is culturally diverse and supports the environment. So it's a really we have good visions and we're working towards good visions, but we do need more support to get there.
I, I kind of want to talk about that your vision there, and because my brain's going a mile a minute here, so give me a minute to catch up to my thoughts here. Partly the thinking of like the current situation with South of Bourne. I'm not going to go too much on that, but there's talk about supporting local more and more, and this program is seems to me to be a great way to support local farmers and local agribusiness because of we all have kids in schools. It seems like a pretty good way of just getting healthy, nutritious Canadian Ontario grown fruits and vegetables into the bellies of hungry kids. And I wonder, like, what can you talk a bit about that part of it? Because that is something I don't think gets talked enough about in this program. Is just how we can tie into our agribusiness industry and the farmers and around us.
For sure, I'm gonna let Heather take that one because she's actually running a
Oh, Heather,
project right now
please.
that's all about this.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought this up because it is something that we have been talking about for a long time, and that I think a lot of the coordinators of the programs also value. And it ends up being a bit on the margins, even though it's a priority and we understand it's important, it doesn't get to the center. But right now, we actually have a research project that we're working on with the Greenbelt Foundation, specifically to look at what is the potential here and how do we bring together more of those local producers and growers cooperatives with schools. And because you're right that when we were talking earlier about the complexity of the system, it's a trickier process for those local farmers to figure out who do they talk to, where does that happen, how do they move forward. And so that's exactly what we're looking at through this project that we are working on. But I know that Student Nutrition Ontario is also looking at that to say how do we balance and have a bit of centralization so that the communication can be easier and the purchasing can be easier. There are a lot of different partners who are food distributors across the province who are both nonprofits and for-profits who are really, really strong allies with the programs, and they will be part of this solution as well. So we've been speaking with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and so there are yeah, touch points basically where we can have these conversations. And the federal program actually allocated $20 million across the country specifically for Buy Canadian. So this national program is going to earmark funds specifically to move this forward. And I think that's going to encourage each of the provinces and territories to figure out how does this work best
Hmm.
in each province. And we were actually on a call yesterday with folks from British Columbia who said that there are food literacy representatives in British Columbia within the Ministry of Agriculture. There are youth engagement folks working on the ground in the ministry. So we're really encouraged that there's potential to really collaborate more with the Ministry of Agriculture alongside the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, which is the main funder right now for the program. So there's a lot more opportunity for partnership across multiple ministries. And that's one of the things that came out of the visioning process that we held last spring was that there really is so much potential for more of the ministries to work together. But again, it just requires collaboration and communication and moving beyond the silos, really.
And also, yeah, I'm part of, it's funding and a change in mandate to make sure that the school food programs and student nutrition programs are part of, both the Ministry of Education here in Ontario as well as the Ministry of Agriculture, which they're not right now. Because yeah, there is such that we have many recommendations for where the Ministry of Agriculture could step in and support the student nutrition program, because we know, like through research, that expanding the market for Ontario grown and prepared food in schools will reduce our dependence on imports, as you were talking about earlier, Joel. Support farmers, strengthen our both regional and our whole Ontario's food systems. And so there is real potential here. We know internationally the school food programs and local procurement within school food programs has been said to be a game changer for local economies. And so we really want to see that potential being actualized here in Ontario.
Um, you mentioned, Heather, you mentioned about the green belt and going to farmers in the green belt, and that's something I didn't think about, honestly. And like I'm hitting myself in the butt because that's low hanging fruit, no pun intended. But a lot of some listeners in the 905, they live on that border of the rural communities, and there are parts of the 905 that are predominantly rural, and there are things about, like, you're driving along farm roads and you see, there's somebody growing potatoes, somebody growing peppers and whatnot. People are saying, well, if they're rather than let it rot, like, why can't we put it into, if we don't sell to the supermarket, why can't we give it to such as our schools, put it into a nutritious meal that way? Is there a real barrier to doing that? Because that always seemed like a pretty simple thing to do. Is that if there's a farmer that says, I've got a couple extra bushels of whatever, apples or pears or whatever, yeah, I'm gonna let me send it down to the school board, and you can send it to a school that needs it.
Yep.
This doesn't seem to be rocket science, yet somehow it always turns out to be. There's always some
Yep. No,
thing that's always in the way. Can you maybe expand on that and what you're actually trying to do there, and what's the barriers? It seems to be really easy to do.
Yep. It's definitely possible, and in some respects it's easy. I guess it's a matter of time and knowledge, right? So that the farmers are really mainly focused on farming, and the schools are really mainly focused on education and food. The connection between those really needs a dedicated person and dedicated focus to make that pathway clearer. So it's almost simple, but not quite. So that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we just find those leverage points that are going to open that little door that is there, but it hasn't quite been opened yet? So,
And
yeah.
and it's also, yeah, capacity too at the school level, right? So they don't necessarily have even the space to drop off, a whole bunch of
Right.
food from a farm, but then the processing piece. So, I think the Greenbelt project is looking at really easily consumable food products that could be dropped off from a farmer rather than things that you have to do a lot of time preparing. Because again, at the school level in Ontario, most of the programs are run by volunteers, which just don't have a lot of capacity. Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that we're looking for in terms of increased funding, right? Is for food costs, for sure, because costs are going up for food, but also for infrastructure, to look at what infrastructure do schools have? Do they have a kitchen? Do they have enough refrigerator space to be able to store those whole foods? Because since COVID, a lot of the food has become more prepared and prepackaged because it had to be during COVID. And then there's a convenience there that has stayed, and we're really trying to move back towards whole foods, which are going to be more nutritious and potentially involve more engagement and be able to more easily be local.
And we've also seen some pilots in Ottawa, actually, who have paid coordinators. So there's stipends for coordinators at the school level who are able to then process those whole vegetables. So we're getting more whole ingredients into the student nutrition program and creating efficiencies and reducing packaging waste. So there's a lot of value in exploring that as well.
I'm curious to get your insight in terms of I think there's an idealized version of this program. I don't think there's anybody really opposed to the idea of feeding kids. At least I hope there's not before they start their day at school. And I think there's an idealized version of this, and there is a bit of the reality of where we're at. I'm wondering, um, Sarah or Heather, how big of a gap is there between the reality and the ultimate goal of, I guess, kids getting a healthy, nutritious start to the day so they can succeed at school versus right now, which is, not to knock on volunteer, but the volunteer run um, situation, is there a big gap there, or is this just one of those things that we got to deal with? Sarah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So right now, so if we were to, so right now we have the program in 80% of schools, which is if we wanted to get to 100% of schools, that's another about 1,000 schools in Ontario. So there's that gap in terms of access to these programs. When we think about participation, there's about 40% of the total Ontario student body that's participating in these programs right now, or of eligible students is about 50%. So we are reaching a lot of people. A lot of students are getting access to these programs. As I mentioned earlier, they are primarily breakfast and snacks, which is great because a lot of kids are really benefiting from these programs that exist. If we want to think about where other provinces are going in terms of school food programs, they're keeping their breakfast and snack programs, but they're adding lunch. And so in Nova Scotia, in PEI, in Newfoundland, in soon to be New Brunswick, and in Quebec has a lot of lunch programs too. There is lunch happening, and there in Nova Scotia, it's a really in an NPEI as well. It's provincial government supported kind of initiative that are the models are pay what you can models, and so parents get to pay what they can. If you can pay 650, which is kind of the highest price you can, if you can pay the middle amount, then that's what you pay, and if you can pay nothing, that's it, right? And there's no stigma attached. It's all an online kind of ordering model, so nobody knows. Those kind of models are actually being piloted right here in Ontario too, with the support of the new federal funds. It's just that we don't have enough money to really expand them to all schools yet.
Mhm.
And so what we need is more funding from all levels of government. So it's, more eventually more funding, more federal funding. We definitely need more funding from Ontario. While we, really value all of the funding that they currently give, we are, compared to other provinces and territories, we're about second to last when it comes to investing in school food per capita. So we really want to see, Ontario hasn't had an increase in about a decade, and we want to see Ontario's share increase. And then we also see really good municipal investments. And the city of Toronto has been a leader in this forever. They are now at $26 million per year, which is close to what actually the whole province of Ontario gives, which is about 32 million a year. And so we want to see more municipalities come on board, and we have been. There was 4 new municipalities that have come on board in the last year. The city of Cambridge just increased their share from 15 grand to 30 grand a year. So it's happening. And so we do again need that all level of government support to really make these programs be able to stabilize what's going on and really offer quality food in the existing programs, and then eventually grow, hopefully to more lunch programs.
I want to go a bit on the funding numbers that you're giving there. You're talking 30 million for the entire province from the provincial government to put in that's to fund this healthy school program. 30
Yeah,
million
so
thereabouts.
MCCSS, the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, they provide seed funding. So it's
Right.
from them, there is 28.2 million dollars that goes to the student nutrition program, and then 4.4 million that goes to the First Nation student nutrition program. So that's a total of 32.6 million dollars. There is an additional 3.6 million dollars that comes from the Ministry of Health to the Northern Fruit and Vegetable Program, which supports schools in northern communities 20 years a week with additional fruits and vegetables, but it's kind of outside the student nutrition programs.
Fair
So yeah,
enough.
from MCCSS, the total is 32.6 million.
That doesn't sound like a lot when you think of the overall budget of the largest province in Canada. We're talking $1 trillion budgets. Um, what I know there's reluctance always to spend money on new things, typically. Um, what's your experience been with trying to get buy-in with the various levels of government? Because my knowledge, my perspective is when you have all these different kind of fingers in the pie, so to speak, it's easy to say, no, they'll pick up the slack for us not funding this year because of whatever reason.
Mhm.
What's been your experience with kind of holding the the people with the money with their feet to the fire to say, no, this fork over the money. This isn't going to break the bank. Uh,
Yeah, we have over the last year and a couple of years since we've been really growing our Ontario Coalition chapter. We've been meeting with a lot of MPPs, ministers. So last year we met with the folks in the Ministry of Education, Agriculture, MCCSS, as well as the Minister of Labor, and yeah, a few other really kind of high ministers. We also had great meetings with somebody in the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Premier's office. So we have been having lots of meetings, kind of sharing our vision of where we could go with school food in Ontario if we did have a bigger provincial investment, and just highlighting that we are, compared to other provinces and territories, when it comes to the per capita investment, we're sitting at 9 cents per student per day. That is, second to last when it comes to the rest of Canada. And we're saying we have such an opportunity right now. We have such an opportunity with the federal funds coming in to build on that investment with an increased Ontario investment. And that would really allow programs to know that they are going to be able to stabilize and they're going to be able to grow and enhance. And there right now there's about 100 schools that we know of on wait lists. But as I said earlier, if we want to get to 100% of schools in Ontario, there's about 1,000 still to go. So that does require a bigger investment. And we just want to make sure that there's really the most nutritious food that can be served in these programs being served. That they're serving 5 days a week. There was kind of cutbacks happening a couple of years ago before the federal funds came in. So we want to make sure that all these programs are being able to run 5 days a week for the full school year, and again expand over time to really meet the
mhm.
need goals of the national school food policy.
um, I get this probably should have been a question I should have asked at the start, and that's my fault. So I'm going to beg your indulgence on this. What's the benefits of feeding kids at the start of the school day? Like, what's the when people are going to think like, what's the return on investment on this? $30 million to put food in the belly of a kid in at my school. What do I get out of it? You know, kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm gonna put that to you, Sarah, to answer that one.
Absolutely. No, great question. Thanks for asking. So, universal school meals have been linked to higher test scores, improved attendance, better behavior, improved mental health. There's a whole bunch of learning, education-based outcomes that are really, really valuable. Of course, it also helps with exposing kids to new foods and getting them to try it. When you sit down with your classmate and you see him trying a tomato or something you've never tried before, there the likelihood that you're going to try it goes up. I've seen it happen. And those, habits that you're building and are really going to help you form, positive eating, positive relationships with food that can really last a lifetime. So it's really setting kind of behaviors and relationships that are going to be really influential for your whole life. And then the social skills as well of sitting down and eating together, right? And,
Mhm.
sharing food and learning about your food as well when we get, more food literacy education into these programs is really impactful. So those are kind of some of the student benefits. But in terms of the return on investment, it does have a really tremendous impact. So and we know through research that it makes a generational difference in the lives of students participating in these programs. We know that children and youth that have gone through these programs kind of throughout their whole lives have higher lifetime earnings. And we also know that through research, every dollar that goes into these programs, 2.5 to 5 times to 7 times that comes out in terms of the return on investment, in terms of the human health and economic benefits that they provide. So that includes, reduced health care costs, increased jobs, increase education levels for students that participate in these programs, less stress on families, and more support for women as well. So it's
Mhm.
it's all around. There's so many reasons to invest in these programs.
Absolutely. Any excuse to get your kid to try something other than Dino Nuggets is a good thing.
Exactly.
um,
And
um,
I do actually, can I add to that in terms of family
absolutely. Good.
days?
Yeah, yeah.
Because, juggling packing school lunches for your kid while working is just something that not the tons of parents are really that excited about. And I know I'm one of those parents, right? And so an investment in school food, as actually a bigger investment in school food, is going to be extremely popular and welcome among Ontario families as a way to both address affordability and relieve time burden
Mhm.
parents. And we're all time burdened, right? And so we see this happening in other provinces and territories who have really invested in a big way in school food. And we're excited for Ontario to increase their investment as well, where we know we can get there.
Um, I, I, I was
Oh,
sorry.
Heather?
I was just going to say that um, because there isn't currently a lunch program in Ontario, there are other ways that schools are offering lunch options, right? With pizza days and other types of things that parents are already paying for. And so, what one of our perspectives is if we can provide an option with the pay what you can, like Sarah was mentioning earlier, then that money that's currently going in certain directions can go into something that can be more universal and healthier. So there is this cost shared model would still continue where
Mhm.
parents could pay if they can, but wouldn't need to and would allow it to be more universal. So it's interesting that in the gap where there aren't lunches now, things are filling in and we don't really have as much of a way to encourage those options to be healthy and to follow nutrition guidelines. Because right now, with the breakfast and snacks that are offered through Student Nutrition Ontario, there are really excellent nutrition guidelines that are being followed. And so we want to be able to just see that expand and go into lunch as well.
Absolutely. And I think there's also great opportunity to expose kids to different cuisines, which is I know we all eat. I was gonna say peanut butter and jam, but I know peanut butter is banned from schools these days. But like we all our kid always says like, no, all we eat is mac and cheese, right? That craft dinner, that's it. Okay, but maybe expose them to different ethnic cuisine that you know the, that's nutritious in a different way.
And
Um,
also serves is reflective of the students within their school often,
Absolutely.
right?
Like
The
we're here in the
diversity of
905.
school. Yeah.
Well, here in the 905, like we're just getting more and more new Canadians coming in, and they're, you know, I always thought the benefit of Canada was that the bounty of our agriculture is that we can kind of grow almost anything in terms of fruits and vegetables. I mean, granted, no tropical fruits, but still we can take that. I always find that it's always interesting when you see like new Canadians come in and say, okay, what can I make with what I find at Sobeys or Loblaws and whatnot, and it creates something new and different. I don't know. It's one of those not to you can't really factor it in, but it's always one of those things like it's one of the great things about Canada is that we're able to actually you know create something new when old becomes new. Um, that's just me editorializing. So
No, absolutely. We totally agree that the programs are doing what they can to include as much culturally relevant food and culturally appropriate food and really, there's some programs that I know of in Ontario that are teaching, about the cultural foods
Mhm.
as they serve them. But we want that to be more widespread and have, make sure that the providers have enough money to really include as much culturally relevant food as they can because it is something that's so important.
And again, tying it back to uh, the farmer who's growing the food and whatnot, that kind of farm to table
Yeah, exactly.
experience
Yeah.
that I think helps kids understand more. Like they're more tied to the land than just going to the grocery store and buying the bag of chips off the shelf.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. That kind of food education is part of the National School Food Program
mhm,
vision and objectives. And so we are hoping, we know that lots of people, some people already do it in Ontario in terms of that, adding that education piece on. And we're hoping that, eventually there's more space and more capacity to do food education because we know, kids who eat the food, do have behavioral changes, but when you're making the food and serving the food, there's even more
right.
impact. So.
Absolutely. Uh, we're coming up on our time here, and I just have one final kind of question for you. Is in your opinion, we've kind of talked about kind of the decentralized nature of the system as it is going now, and I just wanted to ask you, do you think is a more centralized nation program, and I don't mean just tearing down walls, but like maybe a provincial food program and maybe a bureaucracy just to get them, get that food in from the farmer, tie it to maybe a processing system that might need to, put packaged apples together, whatever the case may be, and then more effectively distribute it to the schools that might need it. Is that what we should be looking at, or is there, and I'm just wanting to ensure like accountability and the effectiveness of this program, that we are getting the end result of students who are full bellies, ready to learn and be productive. And, do we need to become, is that what we need to be looking at?
I think that there is kind of not discuss. I think there's discussions within Student Nutrition Ontario of thinking through that provincial procurement piece and seeing how there can be kind of maybe not centralized, procurement for the whole province because we're such a big province, but is there a way to kind of create efficiencies within the procurement piece? And yeah, I think that as the new federal funding comes in, that might be something that we're going to see a focus on. We'll learn more about that hopefully within the coming weeks when the year 2 agreement is kind of finalized and we see the action plan of what the priorities are going to be. Heather, do you have anything to add about that?
I think we're in this middle ground again, really, like I had said before, that yes, there's more cohesion and more communication that can happen, but because the province is so diverse from north to south, from east to west, we will still see differences between the different regions, but increased communication and increased planning together is definitely something, that's the direction that things are going, and that will be helpful. So I think key players, roles that are provincial within the diverse system is something that will be helpful, and I think is happening more and more.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it at that for this episode. Thank you very much, Sarah Keys and Heather Thoma, for coming on to talk about healthy eating in our schools. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
I'm Jeff Woods, and I'm shining a light on music and the rock stars who make it.
He just was one of those people, he stood out.
He was a magic guy. He really was a magic guy. We all have faults. He had the same amount of faults as we all have.
This was before Led Zeppelin. Robert was full on. I mean, he was Led Zeppelin without the band behind him. He had the hair, the jeans, the whole thing, and he was amazing.
The Records and Rock Stars podcast, heard around the world and yours to hear wherever you get podcasts. All the episodes from jeffwoodsradio.com.
The world of audio is evolving fast, so much so that it often means video as well. These days, staying ahead isn't an advantage. It is a necessity. I'm Matt Kundle, and every week on the Sound Off podcast, I speak with the people shaping the future of podcast, broadcast, and audio. Whether you're behind the mic, in the production studio, or in the boardroom, this is your weekly look into the trends, talent, and tech driving audio forward. The Sound Off podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and at soundoffpodcast.com.
Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate the conversation.
Great to be here. Thanks.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.